Hi there, Honors 10 students. So in Act 3, we really see that Iago is planting the seeds of doubt in Othello's mind about Desdemona and Cassio. And this especially takes place in scene 3, which is often called the temptation scene, right? This is where we see that Othello is being tempted to fall from grace in his thoughts and feelings about his wife and his behaviors. The way that he has acted is going to be very different than the way he will act moving forward. And it's surprising for some of us reading this play because Othello is very quick in this act to go from complete love and trust in Desdemona that we saw in Act 1 and Act 2 to, by the end of this act, plotting her death, believing her 100% to be false, to be cheating on him, and to be in need of punishment. So this raises the question, why? How is it that he's so quick to go from putting his complete faith and love in her to suddenly believing with 100% certainty that she is cheating on him and deciding that he must murder her? There's really kind of three main reasons that go into this. Number one is Iago's persuasion. And this is something that Mrs. Stahl really spent some time on with you guys. The second reason is Othello's disposition, meaning his personality and status as an outsider. So we're going to see part of the reason Othello is so quick to change and to set himself on this horrific course of action is because it's his personality. And Iago really manipulates his status as an outsider to drive him down this path. And then the third reason, which we're really going to spend time on in these next videos, is the handkerchief, which is a really important symbol in this play. Okay, so like I said, Mrs. Stahl is really going to be talking about Iago's persuasion and how he tempts Othello and how he leads Othello astray. I'm going to talk a little bit with you guys about these two, his disposition and the handkerchief. So we're going to skip ahead here to page 70. So right here, sorry guys, that's actually the notability pages. Bottom of page 136, very top of 137. So we're still in Act 3, Scene 3 at the very end. And we're going to the bottom of 135 to 137. So this is right after Iago plants these seeds of doubt in Othello's mind and introduces him to the notion that Desdemona is having an affair with Cassio. And notice Othello's reaction. So again, we're trying to understand, why is he so quick to believe Iago and doubt his wife? He said, "This fellow's of exceeding honesty and knows all qualities with a learned spirit of human dealings." So this fellow here that he's referring to is Iago. So basically he's saying Iago is trustworthy. So again, we're going to talk here about Othello's disposition. So who is Othello? Well, number one, we can tell from this, Othello is someone who trusts people. Iago told us this back at the very end of Act 1, right? He uses this to his advantage in Act 2 and Act 3. Othello trusts people. He believes that people are what they seem. Iago seems honest, and so when Iago says these things about his wife, Othello trusts him. He believes that Iago is someone that he can take his word for. So part of the reason Othello is so quick to doubt is because his personality is one of trust. Now, a second reason that he's so quick to doubt is pointed out here in these other lines that he says. He says, if I do prove her haggard, though that her jesses were my dear heartstrings, I'd whistle her off and let her down the wind to pray at fortune. And then further down here, he says, she's gone, I'm abused, and my relief must be to loathe her. And then he says, I'd rather be a toad and live upon the vapor of a dungeon than keep a corner in the thing I love for others' use. Even then, this forked plague is fated to us when we do quicken. So when we take these lines, which they can be a little confusing, so let's kind of break them down. This first one, if I do prove her haggard, basically he's using here this metaphor. He's comparing himself, Othello, to a falconer and Desdemona to a falcon. If I do prove her haggard, meaning if she proves that she is not responding to me, she's not obeying me, she has flown away from me, then I'll turn her loose, he's saying, though that her jesses were my dear heartstrings, even though the strings that would tie a falcon's feet to the falconer's glove were his own heartstrings. He'd cut them, he's saying. I'd whistle her off and let her down the wind to pray at fortune. I'd let her go her own way, right? He says, if she's gone, I'm abused, and my relief must be to loathe her. So we see here a second reason Othello is so quick to this course of action is because he is not someone who belabors a decision. He's not someone who spends a lot of time thinking things through. He is someone who acts. He is a man of action. Remember, Othello is a general, and he's very good. Generals are someone who can quickly assess a situation and make snap judgments, make quick decisions that could mean life or death, that do mean life or death. And they understand those consequences, and yet they're able to very quickly determine what they should do next. He is not someone who spends a lot of time, who is used to spending a lot of time thinking over, mulling over decisions. This is a man who has been in battle. This is a man whose life has been in the military. He is used to quick action. And so if he finds out that she's false, he is not going to mess around. He's not going to give her second chances. He's going to make a decision, and that decision will be to let her go. He will hate her. If she does not love him, if he cannot love her, then it will be hate. This is someone who is a man of action, right? He says, I'd rather be a toad and live upon the vapor of a dungeon than keep a corner in the thing I love for others' uses. He'd rather be this lowly animal than have to share her with someone else. He is not going to mess around with her if she's messing around on him. This makes sense to you guys. He says, even then, this forked plague is fated to us when we quicken. So he's referring here to being a cuckold. This man married to an unfaithful woman, and he believes that this is just part of human nature for women to go astray, to be false. And so if she is going to do this, then he is done with her. So this kind of helps us explain why he would go from complete love to suddenly plotting her death, because that's part of who he is. But there's a third thing going on here, a third reason why he's so quick to believe Iago. So part of it is he trusts people. Iago says so, he trusts him. Second one is he's quick to action. He's not going to overthink something. And a third one is what he says here in the green. He says here, happily, for I am black and have not those soft parts of conversation that chamberers have, or for I am declined into the vale of years. So happily he here means perhaps. Perhaps because I am black, he says. Perhaps because I don't have the soft parts of conversation. I'm not used to smooth conversation and polite company. Perhaps because I am declined in years. Perhaps because I am older. So we see here he's starting to believe what people are saying about him. Remember, the very beginning of the play, Brabantio says, there's no way Desdemona could possibly have gone willingly with you. You are an old black man who is in the military. What could a white Venetian aristocrat want to do with you? You guys are worlds apart. The only way she could possibly be interested in you is if you practice some kind of witchcraft on her. And Iago manipulates this. He subtly suggests this in his temptation scene that Mrs. Stahl talks about. And we see Othello starting to internalize this negative talk about him in society. So we see that a third reason is Othello is starting to internalize. He's starting to believe that he doesn't deserve her. That he isn't a good fit for her. And that she would want to go astray because of this, because he is a different race, because he is older than her, because he is not used to the polite aristocratic society that she is used to. So we see him starting to take in and believe some of this doubt and derogatory language that others have used about him. And all of these things are sort of working together to create this perfect storm. But without this third, last crucial piece, Othello would not have believed Desdemona false. Because notice what he says here. After Iago's really great manipulative persuasive speech, even after he starts to internalize some of this and starts to question her himself, notice what he says here on line 319. If she be false, heaven mocks itself. I'll not believe it. He doesn't believe when Desdemona appears. He doesn't believe she's cheating. Especially when he sees her, right? Because she is so beautiful, so fair. So again, we see this idea of appearance versus reality. She appears so beautiful and fair, and so he can't believe the reality that she might be foul, that she might be going astray. So what is it that then tips the scales for him? Well, notice what happens here in this scene. Desdemona comes in and Othello says, I have a pain upon my forehead here. So this is a reference to the cuckold. Again, this man who's married to an unfaithful woman. Because the cuckold was often pictured as a man with horns. Desdemona says, faith, that's with watching. 'Twill away again. Let me but bind it hard. Within this hour it will be well. So Othello tries to help him by wrapping her handkerchief around his head. And Othello says, your napkin is too little. He brushes it aside. And notice, the handkerchief falls unnoticed. Amelia, picking up the handkerchief, says, I am glad I have found this napkin. This was her first remembrance from the moor. My wayward husband hath 100 times wooed me to steal it. But she so loves the token, for he conjured her she should ever keep it, that she reserves it evermore about her, and kisses and talks to. I'll have the work taken out and give it to Iago. What he will do with it, heaven knows, not I. I nothing but to please his fancy. So the handkerchief is picked up by Amelia because Iago has been asking her to take it, to steal it, because he wants it. She doesn't know why. She says, heaven knows, not I, what he will do with it, right? But we know that he is plotting here. He's going to use it to frame Desdemona and Cassio. And part of the reason why is because this is not just any handkerchief. This is not just any piece of cloth. This is special. This handkerchief is special for a lot of reasons. And it's going to become a really important symbol and a really important reason for why Iago doubts Desdemona and believes that she is cheating with Cassio.